The first page is these rules apply to vessels not in sight of one another when navigating in or near an area of unrestricted visibility, meaning that this rule applies to such vessels that may be close to each other but cannot visually see each other. Electronic devices and sound signal may be the only possible means of detection, and thus the action that would be taken would not visible by the other vessel. The areas are not only in areas of poor visibility but also areas near to that, meaning that ships should be careful when approaching a fog bank or area poor visibility caused maybe by any weather or other condition. The next page, very vessel shall proceed at safe speed adapted to the provided circumstances and condition of restricted visibility. A power-driven vessel shall have engines ready for immediate maneuver. It means so that she can take proper and effective action to avoid collision and be stopped within a distance appropriate to the prevailing circumstances and conditions. The next page is every vessel shall have due regard to prevailing circumstances and conditions of restricted visibility when complying the rules selection I of this part. It means every vessel should proceed at a safe speed adapted to providing circumstances and restricting visibility. And the next page, a vessel which detects by radar alone the presence of another vessel shall determine if a close quarters situation is developing and a risk of collision exists. It so shall take avoid action ample time provided within such action consists alteration in course so far as possible. The following shall be avoided. It means a vessel which detected by radar alone the presence of another vessel shall determine if a close quarter situation is developing and or risk collision exists. Next, an alteration of course to port for a vessel forward of being other than a vessel being overtaken, meaning and restricted ability when the vessel cannot see each other as required by the rules. The above to be complied with a course alteration of course to port has been devised against, and it should be followed as far as practicable. If the situation deems that alteration of course other planned port is required, then that may be done. Is an alteration of course toward a vessel being apart the bend.
So this time we're going to be looking at a radar plot. Of course we can't do a normal situation because we cannot see the other vessel. It's all going to be on the radar screen. For ease of reference, I'm going to divide our screen into 4 sectors. Of course, everything forward of the beam is in the top 2 halves and everything abaft the beam is in the bottom 2 halves. Right, so what happens if we detect a target out on the starboard side? It's forward of the beam and it's out to starboard. We've got to make an alteration of course to starboard because we need to avoid an alteration of course to port for a vessel forward of the beam. Likewise, if it's out on port side forward of the beam, getting closer still, we've got to alter our course to starboard because we need to avoid an alteration of course to port. And then if the target is astern of us, this time out on the port quarter, again we'd alter away from it because we need to avoid an alteration of course towards it. So we alter to starboard again. And then the final quarter, out on the starboard quarter, if it's getting closer to us, we need to alter away from it. So this time we're going to come round to port. So this is the only one where we actually come to port. The rest of them we need to come to starboard. So you can have a look at all these together. Wherever the target is, unless it's out behind the beam on the starboard side, we need to alter our course to starboard. And if it's on our starboard quarter, we need to alter our course to port. Of course, the exception is if we're overtaking. So All this implies we have to do a radar plot, we need to determine everything, and if that tells us we are overtaking the vessel, then we are allowed to come to port for it if it's forward of the beam.
The last is except where it has been determined that a risk of collision does not exist, where a vessel which shears appropriately forward of her beam, a fog signal of another vessel which cannot avoid close quarter situation with another vessel forward of her beam shall adjust her speed to be the minimum at she can be kept. Of course, she shall, if necessary, take all way of any event, navigate with extreme caution until danger of collision is over. It means distractibility means any condition in which the ability is distracted by fog, means falling snow, heavy windstorm, sandstorm, or any other similar causes.